Thanks for being here today at the Clothier Round Table. I'm Sarah, I'll be your moderator. And who do I have with me?
Hi, I'm Danielle Heiser. I'm the design director here at Clothier Design Source.
Hi, I'm Mindy Martell, and I'm the president of Clothier Design Source.
I'm Carrie Buffalo, and I am one of the design managers here at Clothier.
Today we're going to talk about sourcing, and particularly fabric sourcing and trim sourcing. We have an entire department dedicated to finding your fabrics and trims for your products. And so, we're pretty experienced doing it. We've done it for over 1,000 brands.
Wow. What exactly is fabric and trim sourcing, Danielle?
Sure, yeah. Fabric and trim sourcing is the acquisition of the raw materials that go into a product. So it's working with the fabric and the trim mills and representatives of those mills that make the fabrics and the trims that go into a product. So that means we do stock sourcing. So that means fabric and trims that are sitting on a shelf waiting for us to buy them at a wholesale level. Also made to order products. So that means that something that's been developed but is not sitting on a shelf, so we have to order it. And then also we do custom development and sourcing. So that's the something that doesn't exist that you'd like to see, we can actually design, develop it, and have it made.
So it's really like a three-tier kind of sourcing system, like easier to find to really, really extremely hard to find.
Yeah, definitely. And what's cool is we do have a lot of experience with all three tiers, so we can help advise you. If you don't know if something exists, you probably do know if it's available or if you have to custom develop it.
Right. It's kind of like if you can dream it up in your mind, we can make it happen.
Totally.
Why is fabric sourcing a difficult task?
You can't just run out to your local Joann Fabrics or fabric store. All of the fabrics that are in the industrial world, or the behind the scenes in the apparel industry, you can't just go to the store and get. You have to go to specialty fabric mills, which are located all around the world. And the industry is kind of stuck in the past, really. I mean, it's not like you can go to Google and be like, I want to find a high-tech wicking, poly nylon fabric. If you do that, you're not going to get the plethora of mills out there that are making those fabrics. They're not advertising on Google. They're not on the web. It's really kind of this background, underground network of these old school vendors that are using sales reps and fax machines to communicate, and so they're just really hard to locate. They're not desperate to find customers. They're all very busy, so they're not out there, and they're not catering to the startups either. They're not looking for startups, and many of them prefer not to have a startup, so they aren't making themselves very accessible.
Do you have any advice to make fabric and trim sourcing easier, Danielle?
Yeah, I'd say the number one thing, the first thing that anybody should do when trying to develop a product is to go out to a store and purchase any sort of sewn item or like another garment, or if you have an accessory and that has a similar fabric or a similar trim that what you're looking for. Because that's going to instantly convey to, if you're working with us to source, or if you're working with another agent or a mill, it's going to convey exactly what you're looking for. Because you'll soon find out, if you're going down the sourcing path, that content labels really tell you almost nothing. I mean, it tells you the fiber content and the percentages, but you can have two very different fabrics that have the exact same fiber content but serve completely different purposes.
Mindy, you'd mentioned startups already, but Carrie, could you tell us what a startup? How do we just define a startup?
Sure. Well, one way to define a startup would be someone who's been in business or selling their product for a year or less. So pretty new to the market would be someone who is a startup. They don't really have a lot of sales history. So there's someone who is trying to develop a product, or maybe you've developed it, but you just haven't really sold very much of it or sold it for very long in the market. So you're really new. You're bringing something very new to the market. That would be a startup.
And do mills like to work with startups, or how do they work with them? Do they like to?
Well, to be honest, I don't think they really like to work with a startup, like Mindy mentioned. So it can be very difficult. That's not to say that it can't be done. And we do work with startups and mills directly. We've had a successful range of products done that way, but it's a lot easier for us to work with the mill than it would be for an individual business owner to work with the mill. Couple of reasons for that. One would be because we have probably developed some sort of a relationship with most of the mills, and we can probably direct you in the best way to go about doing it. We can have a really good conversation with the mill as to what we need and ask for a special way to get it, especially if we need only a small amount. They may say, you know, we're producing that at this time for another client. You could tack your order on, and then we could make your small amount for you in combination with this bigger order we're making. Maybe there's some other option of fabric that they have that they can show us that's maybe a more stock item that's available. So there's a lot of different ways to work with the mill, but it's usually better to have someone like an expert like us or another agent to work with the mill directly rather than trying to reach out to the mill directly as a business owner.
How would you get a mill to take you seriously?
I would do a lot of research before reaching out to them. They can sniff out a newbie from like a mile away, right? And if they think you're brand new and you don't know what you're talking about, they're not going to be very eager to help you. For one, that translates, you know, what they're thinking, low volume. They're thinking, okay, this is a low volume customer that is going to ask me a ton of questions and take up a ton of my time. I may never get a sale, so they're not that eager to help you. So if you're going to venture out on your own, get to know if your fabric is a knit or a woven, right? Get to know what kind of knit or woven it is. Get to know if it's an interlock or a jersey knit or a twill woven or a, you know, broadcloth. Get to know what you're looking for. You can do that by just doing a lot of research. You could reach out to some consultants and just spend a little bit of time with them, getting some advice. We can offer consultations like that too. Get to know timelines. Get to know some basic questions. What are your minimums? You know, do you have a stock program? You know, what are your timelines? How long does it take you to ship? And then, of course, pricing per yard. A really good indicator that makes you look like you're seasoned is, you know, if you know the weight of your fabric. So if you could send your fabric to a lab, or you could have it sent to us here at Clothier Design Source, and we can punch your fabric and weigh it for you. But if you can say to a vendor, I'm looking for a knit fabric that's jersey, and I know I wanted 140 grams per meter squared, and I know I want, you know, 300 yards to start. If you come out of the gate knowing your stuff a little bit, they're going to take you so much more seriously. They're in the business to sell fabric, right? Like, they're not in the business to educate clients. So we're in the business to educate clients and help them, but they are not. So if you want them to take you seriously, educate yourself first and then go to them. Long-winded answer, but
Yeah, good advice.
Great.
Carrie, could you tell us maybe some of your most memorable success stories about fabric sourcing?
So I had one product where we were given a swatch of a certain type of power mesh, and it wasn't just your regular power mesh. It was very, very heavy duty. It had some stretch to it, and it had a ton of support, and it was really, really difficult to find. We looked at all of our vendors. We went to a couple trade shows and showed the swatches and asked if they'd seen anything or made anything like it. And eventually we found something that was actually almost the exact same thing, but it was better because it had a little bit more durability and a little bit more stretch than they originally intended it to have. And it worked much better in the product. But we found, we found what they were looking for, but we gave it a little bit of a boost because it became better for the product, improved the fit and the function of the product.
What was the key to the success there? Like what made it, what made it successful?
Probably one of the biggest ways we succeeded in that was not, it ended up being a fabric that didn't come from a typical clothing user, or like the manufacturer didn't always make textiles for garments or even the type of garment that we were looking to source it for. They made textiles for other things, and through that we kind of figured out that they could make what we were looking for. But
I mean, what else do you think makes us successful in finding?
Sure. I mean, I think that our relationships that we have with the mills and the fabric reps is the most important thing, because with that example that Carrie was just talking about, is that mill was like really willing to work with us because they're taking it seriously. We've purchased fabric from them before. They know that we have a lot of business that we can bring to them through all of our thousands of different brands we work with. And so they were like, okay, I'll take the extra time to work with you because I know you, and you know we know that you're a legitimate business and this can go somewhere. And then also thinking outside of the box, with the Clothier team, that's something that really we strive with. And so, I'm sure our sourcing department was like, hey, Carrie, I know they don't normally use this mesh is actually used for this heavy duty case, it's like an industrial case, but like maybe that could work. And then so, we were like, oh yeah, okay, well, we're putting this mesh in a bra, this like special kind of bra, but it's used in a case. So I think having the expertise and the partner that has a big sourcing department like we have really allows us to have this big scope over all textiles that we could bring to that client.
Yeah, I think thinking outside the box is the biggest
Yes.
thing, and having our combined knowledge of sourcing and sources to go to in terms of mills and vendors, but then also having each other who have developed many different kinds of products where we can think about what fabrics we should really go after and what will work, for that product.
And I think another key is knowing the lingo.
Certainly.
I think so.
When I kind of mentioned that earlier,
Yeah.
but when you contact a vendor, probably one of our keys with this power mesh is, for one, we knew it was called power mesh.
Right.
Like number one, we knew that. Number two, we knew the weight.
Well, on the reverse, do you have any horror stories?
There are some horror stories. I mean, luckily nothing like, too horrible, but the first one that comes to mind is stock levels. So this is really common where we'll source a fabric and it'll be the perfect fabric and it'll be great. We'll use it for prototyping, it gets approved, but then that client won't place a production order or purchase their production fabric order for a few months. And so when the time comes, when they've acquired the funding and are able to place that production order, we go back to the mill and place our order, and guess what? The stock levels went down. So, we needed 250 yards to complete the order in this one colorway. Well, they only have 50 yards. So, there's been some really disappointed clients who had to make a decision at that point of either A, push back your production timeline to get that fabric milled or dyed, so actually knit and then dyed, or can they be flexible in their colorways? Maybe that mill has that same fabric, we've already tested it and approved it, but they, instead of having it in light gray, they have it in dark gray. Can you be flexible in order to get your production in time? So, that's never a happy thing. So in that case, this particular client had to be flexible. They could have, once it was approved in prototyping, maybe they should have purchased their fabric knowing that they were going to go into production, but then they would have tied up all those funds, but then they would have had it later. So it's like you have two options: is tie up your funds and order that fabric early, or take the risk and be flexible later. The other thing that has happened before too is when a client, this usually happens when they source the fabric on their own, and they were like, great, love this fabric, I'm gonna buy it. Well, they haven't even tested it in a prototype yet.
Yeah.
So they buy 30,000 yards. This happened where they bought 30,000 yards of fabric thinking, oh, I'm gonna use this in the future, and it's gonna be great. Well, then all of a sudden we start prototyping and it's just not performing in the way that they need it to be. Like I'm thinking of this athletic tank top, and they wanted to develop it. It had to have a certain level of support and function and retention and wash and durability. And so when we started prototyping in it, it just didn't fit or feel how they wanted it to. So, but they had 30,000 yards of it. So at that point, the client had to make a choice. Okay, well, I can sort of deviate from my original concept on the design in order to use my fabric, or you hang on to that fabric for future use, sell it, maybe you can try to return it, and pivot and source a new fabric. But I'd say those two things of not purchasing your fabric before you test it and being stuck with it.
It's big no-no.
Don't do that.
That's big.
Or planning for a production order without securing your fabric after testing it, and then the stock levels being different. Those are the two things that I've seen.